This week, Brad Hawthorne talks big bodies of water, nighttime bites versus daytime bites, and places to look for walleyes during early, middle, and late ice. Welcome to this week's episode of Ask the Buzz, the show where you ask us your fishing questions and we answer them. I'm Nick Linder, and this week I have with me Mr. Brad Hawthorne, who's a Minnesota guide. And what waters do you usually spend a lot of time on?
Well, the last 5 years, as you guys know, Mille Lacs has had a lot of bad press over the last 5 years, and I used to be on the fisheries committee down there. And I knew that the walleye populations were sinking, so I took that opportunity to go and guide on other big bodies of water in the state. So in the last 5 years, I spent a couple years on Red, one season on Lake of the Woods, and now I'm back down to Mille Lacs, and we've also mixed in a little Leech Lake action in there too as well. So I took a negative and made it a positive, I guess.
Right,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So obviously he has a lot of good experience all across a lot of the best walleye factories in Minnesota. So he will have some good answers to these questions. So the first one that I picked for you that I thought you would do well with was from Tom Norden. And Tom asked, when fishing large bodies of water such as Lake of the Woods or Leech Lake in the winter, what should I key in on for places to start drilling holes?
Okay, the question's a little bit open-ended, so I'm going to kind of go full circle with that one, Tom. Early season, I'll start with Leech. Early season on Leech, the fish really like that witching hour in the morning and in the evening. Shallow rocks, 8 to 16 feet. Look for the islands if you get my drift out there. That can be some really good ice fishing out there. They don't hang around for a long time. And as the season goes on Leech, you just want to take those locations where you're finding them, points, islands, in those witching hours, and move it strategically out deeper. And if you can find those fish, let's say in 12 to 16 feet in the early season on rocks, start moving out to maybe a channel area that goes down to the basin a little bit later on, 3 weeks after that, and just kind of follow them out until you're in that late season period where they switch over to eating bugs. Because Mille Lacs, Leech, Lake of the Woods, when you start catching perch out in the basin is usually when the walleyes in those bodies of water start, dipping out to those areas and feeding on the same thing. So there's not a definite answer to that. There's seasonal movements with the fish, but once you find them, if you stay on them, you usually catch fish all season long. So
in other words, you're saying start up and work out.
Start up and work out on Leech and Lake of the Woods. It's basically a shiner bite. That the last season on Lake of the Woods, they had a shiner run. There wasn't a lot of big shiners up there, but it was enough to haul massive pods of fish down to that south shore, which was good because they hadn't really had a real shiner run in a few years. They had a few here and there, but last year they ran and they were all about like that big, and there was a few bigger ones mixed in. Now this year, they ran like crazy. Like all the bait dealers up there were happy. They were getting gallons and gallons of minnows, and the fall bite on the rainy was, you saw that. That was good.
Oh yeah, right.
So those fish all ran up there and ate that buffet. Well, now that buffet is slowly dispersing itself underneath the ice, and the ice fishermen on Lake of the Woods should have, I'm not promising anything, but this year they should have one heck of an early season bite up there.
Wow.
So Lake of the Woods, there's not a lot of structure out in front of Pine Island there, but there are some sporadic rocks and contour lines. And what's different about Lake of the Woods is the schools of fish. Imagine massive schools of fish where they're a quarter mile long, but they're not, tight together like they're spawning. They're just kind of a massive biomass of fish moving around, feeding on a bait school that is seemingly endless because it's coming out of a river.
Right.
And then it disperses as the season goes on. So Lake of the Woods, I fish more structure later than earlier.
Okay.
So starting in late season, getting off of Knight and Bridges area, off in the deeper area structures out there, in the end of January, February, March, those types of areas, and getting away from the high traffic stuff as well. But the one thing that Lake of the Woods has in the spring is it almost reverts itself. So once you get back to March, once their season starts to close, those fish start to come in again, not for the bait, but to spawn back in the Rainy River.
Right.
So it's almost like they come out, they start to get structure orientated again, and then they start to move back towards the Rainy River. If I was a Lake of the Woods walleye, Nick, I don't know that I'd move that far. I think I'd kind of hang around that river area, but they have to eat, so they move around. So that's Lake of the Woods in a nutshell is the same thing. Follow that biomass of fish, and just because you're not catching a fish one after another on Lake of the Woods doesn't mean that you're not in the middle of a big school of walleye.
Okay, right on. I like that. If I was a Lake of the Woods walleye.
Yeah.
All right, question number 2. And this one is from Mark Askelson. And Mark asks, why do some lakes, such as Upper Red Lake, have a great night bite during the ice season, but other lakes do not?
It's lake makeup. I don't know for sure why, because you take a lake like Lake of the Woods, where the bite sometimes can tail off. Most of the time it does tail off towards dark. But Red Lake has similar tannins in the water, similar color to the water, but later in the season, the night bite on red heats up. And I really think it's more due to the nature of the fish. You know, I think people give fish, walleye in particular, too much credit sometimes. They're still cold-blooded creatures, and whenever it's easiest for them to feed, whenever they can be more of a efficient of a predator, is when they will do that. Lake of the Woods is during the day, it seems like, or by percentages, largely during the day. Red Lake, I've seen it both ways on Red Lake, where you can catch 60, 70 fish during the day in early ice, and then later in the year, like in January, you'll scratch out 15 to 20 during the day, but then you'll catch 30 or 40 at night. So I think it's more to do with what the bait is doing and when the fish actually can see and be a more efficient predator to that. I mean, it's actually a pretty difficult question, because I'm not a walleye, I don't live in their brain to be able to say, hey, I'm a Red Lake Walter and we feed at 6 o'clock in January because we feel like it. There's a reason for it, and the only thing I can think of is they can eat more food at night.
Is there, outside of maybe current up-to-date fishing reports, is there any other way that you would know if you had to choose between, for some reason, if you had to choose between fishing during the day and maybe getting out for the night bite after work or something? Is there any way to know besides fishing reports?
Yeah, I mean, doing it.
Yeah, being out. Well, that's sort of the same as a fishing report.
Sort of the same. The fishing reports are key, but I don't know, man. Other than fishing reports and going and doing it, there's really no good way of knowing.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough.
Unless you got that lucky charm, I don't know.
Right. Well, that's key, right? Well, there you have it, Mark. Question number 3 is from Sean White. I don't think this is the snowboarder, Sean White.
No?
Sean asks, what is considered good walleye structure when ice fishing for walleyes during the first, middle, and last ice?
That's an awesome question. The lakes I'm most proficient on are going to be Mille Lacs, Red, and Lake of the Woods. And on all 3 of them, early rock is key for me, either just on or just off. And for some reason, even on Mille Lacs, they can't resist it. They just can't. And I don't know if it's the bait, I don't know if it's feeding habits, but if you set up on a rock point on Red Lake and it starts to get dark, you're going to catch fish. If you set up, just let's say off of one of the larger points on Mille Lacs, you're going to catch fish. Leech, the same thing. Lake of the Woods, it's one of those questions where each lake needs its own answer. Mille Lacs, if you're getting off after work and it's 4 o'clock and you're going to run out there, any place you can get to a quarter mile offshore where rock dips into mud, sand, or just changes, set up right on that transition, and you should catch fish in the early season. And as it goes on throughout the year, you're going to want to get out into more of that basin stuff when the bugs start popping. So, I'm trying to, first, middle, and late ice. First ice, rock, transitions for sure. Any inlets or outlets that are holding concentration of bait, look for that. Middle of the year is mid-season. That's structure time of year for me on any body of water, unless it's a high-pressured body of water like Upper Red Lake. You've seen in Upper Red Lake the mad dash for the center bar. Everyone thinks they have to fish the center bar.
Sure.
It's a piece of structure right in the middle of the lake, and people are like, there's got to be walleyes out there. Well, yeah, there is, and then you get 5,000 people out there fishing them, and the 5,000 fish that are out there are now in your bucket, literally the first weekend. So
Sure.
It's one of those things where the walleyes are always where you find them, and a good rule of thumb is fish structure early, and as the season moves on and the bugs start coming out of the mud basins, start to focus there. But don't forget about anything in between. If there's a mud flat, and then a mud flat on Mille Lacs, and then a large actual mud basin area, look out there too. I mean, there's no definite answer, but I use what I know they eat throughout the year to find the walleyes at that particular time.
Sure. Yeah, that tends to be a theme. So, okay, what about the very end of ice?
Okay, very end of ice. Red Lake is a difficult lake to fish late season if you're going for walleye. The bite does get a little slower, and I don't know if that's due to pressure or depth. It's so shallow that I think that cold really penetrates down through that water. And fish being cold-blooded, I think they're a little bit affected to that. Late season, around the deeper holes you can find on Mille Lacs, definitely. Off of any rock bar, and when I'm saying deep, I'm talking over 28 feet. And again, looking for those mud holes. Anything buggy, because at the end of the season on Leech, the bugs start to pop. Mille Lacs, they start to pop. Red Lake, every lake they start to pop. So really, if you have structure and a little mud bowl right next to it, that's literally like a sleeping area and a dinner buffet, and that's where you're going to find fish. And what a lot of people can't really understand is, let's say you mark fish on structure, and you can't get them to go. You drop a camera down, and you can see that there's walleyes down there. Mm-hmm. That's the bedroom. You found the bedroom, and you can sit there and jig all day, and these fish aren't going to move. And then during the day, they'll be down in that mud feeding. So sure. It's one of those lake effects where you switch it around. Where in the springtime of the year, you would be fishing the top of it. In the late season, you're going to be fishing the bottom of it.
Right. Cool. Well, that's great. I don't think we have time for any more questions, but we got some good stuff. If people are looking for more information on what you got going on, what's new with you, where should they be looking? You
can look at Hooked on the Ice and Hooked on the Water on Facebook, and Brad Hawthorne's guide service on Facebook if you guys want to find more info.
Great deal. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Now you guys keep on sending us questions, and we'll keep answering them.